Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mariah Effect podcast. My name is Mariah, and I'm going to be alone this week. I'm going to be talking about something pretty heavy. So if you don't want to listen to heavy topics this week, if you would rather not listen to me talking about an event that was very, very big and important to the people of Aurora, Colorado, in the summer of 2012, then I will see you next week, and thank you so much for listening. But what I'm going to be talking about today is the Aurora Movie Theatre Shooting. Since today, the day that this is coming out, is the day after the 11th anniversary, the 11-year anniversary of it happening. Now, some of the things I want to talk about today are talking about where I was at the time and talking about how this sort of an event can affect an entire city, an entire state, an entire country, without affecting someone personally. And I also want to talk about, in my own way, my kind of thoughts or feelings about the true issue on the table with this sort of thing. And again, anything I say on this podcast, I want to make very clear, are just the way that I feel about something, the ways that I think, which may be the same way that you think. It may be completely different than the way that you think. And I'm in no place, no way to judge other people, and I wouldn't want to. But I think it's important to talk about, and it's important to remember. I went to Overland High School, which is a part of Cherry Creek School District in Aurora, Colorado. I lived in Aurora, Colorado for a really long time. I lived off of Nome Street, which is off of Mississippi and Peoria. And the movie theater that I always went to for nearly every movie, if I was going with my mom and we were coming from our house, we would go to that movie theater. That was next to the Aurora Mall. And I remember that day for the Batman movie, I remember my Uncle Tony had said that he was going to go. He was going to take his son, I think it was just his son. It might have been his son and his youngest daughter that he was going to go to it to see the movie. But I think it was just his son. And they were going to go. It was a midnight showing. It would have been so cool for a 10-year-old to go see it. And I remember thinking, wondering if I was going to see him there because I had wanted to go too. But I don't remember if I was grounded or if, something else was going on. I don't remember. But I had gone to my grandparents' house to spend the night. And I went to bed. I told my friends I wasn't going to go. Some of them had said that they didn't think that they were going to go either. And it was the group kind of dissolved. So I didn't know at the time. But none of us had decided to go. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night to my Uncle Roy watching it on the news. And it's like I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my eyes that this event was happening. Like, it didn't feel real. It didn't feel like something that could happen, because these are things that happened, to other people. This happened like in other places that were like important places, important cities or whatever. It didn't happen at a movie theater. It didn't happen in the middle of the night like that. You know what I mean? It was so surreal. And I remember having that moment of like, this is not real, quickly followed by, oh my gosh, did my Uncle Tony go to this movie theater with my cousin, my 10-year-old cousin? Did my friends go? Did some of my friends end up going? And I have never texted as quickly in my life as I was texting after this event. During this event, I should say. And just trying to figure out who was there, right? I don't remember how I went to sleep that night. I think I was up for another hour and then cried myself to sleep because some people I didn't have answers from. And, regardless of if anybody I knew was there, to see like the numbers of how many people were dead, like at that point already, and how many people were injured, and hearing the story of exactly how it happened and how planned it was and everything. It was just so horrible to process. And I've talked before on the podcast about how I used to, keep my eyes closed or turn away from the news, turn away from horrible things, because in my mind, in my heart, I felt like, what can I possibly do to make a difference? How is me knowing about it going to change anything when I can't do anything? And in the years since, as I talked about before with the Sound of Freedom movie, closing my eyes not only doesn't help, but it makes things worse in some ways, because it's keeping something in the dark that needs to be seen. This tragedy was something that Aurora felt for years. I moved to LA in the beginning of 2017. And I remember when I went to California, for years afterwards, it would always be, oh, you're not from California, like, where are you from? And after a while, I would just say Denver, because everybody knows Denver, right? But people would either not know Aurora, right? Or it would stir something in their memory and they'd think like, why do I know Aurora, Colorado? Like, and this like look in their eyes of trying to figure out like, where do I know, the city Aurora, Colorado? Why do I know that, right? And after a while it would click with them, or some people just knew right away. They'd go, wow, isn't that, like where the Batman shooting happened? And anytime somebody brought it up, I'd go, yeah, that's where it happened, the movie theater that I would always go to. That's where it was. And it would fill me with sadness over again, thinking about it. But after everything happened, the movie theater was closed for a while. I don't really remember how long. I know it was a long time, to at least to a, how old was I? 15-year-old girl whose main joy in life was going to the movie theaters with her friends or to the mall with her friends. But it was closed for a long time, and I remember afterwards, after they reopened, the number of people that were like, you're not going to catch me at the movie theater, at that movie theater. You're not going to catch me there. You're not going to see me. But I was I was on this wave of thinking of like, the only way to get back to normal is to go to the movie theater, is to like kind of get it over with, right? And when I walked into that movie theater, there were so many things that were different than it used to be. And like I said, this is a movie theater I went to all the time. Like, quite possibly at least once a month, if not more. Like, that's the movie theater that I went to see... I swear I had a movie in my head. I don't know. I went there all the time. Like, when I'm thinking about like movies that I went to go see, it's like a majority of the Harry Potter movies I went to go see there. Most of the Twilight movies, saw them there. When I went to go see, what do you call it? Catching Fire. I'll get there. Hold on. Hunger Games. When I went to go see the Hunger Games movies, it was at that theater, right? So like, thinking about how it used to be, and then walking into that movie theater that changed so much because they wanted to erase this horrible thing that happened from people's memories, was so crazy. It was so insane. And going to see whatever movie I went to, I don't even remember. I don't remember if I was with other people when I went for the first time. That's lost to time. I don't know. But thinking about how when I sat in the movie theater and people would walk in, like the preview started or whatever, and then somebody would walk in after the preview started because they were late. The fear that entered my body was visceral. I couldn't breathe. And I wasn't there. I wasn't at the movie theaters when this event happened. I didn't know anybody really on any sort of personal level who had been there. And yet, like, that fear was there for me. I was scared. And it's just this idea that you don't really understand until it happens near you. It happens to you. It happens around you, of you are not ever really safe. There are so many dangers out there and so many people who have ill intention. And it is scary. Imagine being 15, 16 years old and having your whole life change around you, but you don't even recognize it until you're in a movie theater about to watch a movie in your theater, your movie theater, right? Like the movie theater that you've been to every day for years. Anytime you wanted to see a movie. And to feel fear is crazy. It's insane. In 2018, 2019, around about, there's a book that came out by one of the authors that I really enjoyed. Ellen Hopkins is her name, and she would write these books that were basically like, there would be a character, and that character would have their own chapter, I guess you could call it. But basically their chapter was written in stanzas, like a poem. And they're very artfully done. Every book kind of different, right? And there's a book that came out by her that I immediately wanted to read because I loved her books. And the book was called People Kill People. And I got the book, didn't even think about the title, didn't even think about what it could be about, right? Even though it's pretty clear what it was about. But Ellen Hopkins, she wrote books that were for young adults. Now, in 2019, I was not necessarily a young adult age, which, like, young adult literature is really, like, 15, like 14-year-old to like 20, maybe, like teenage years, right? But I loved young adult books, young adult literature. It's some of the best writing in terms of what it is like to be in that age, right? Because being a teenager is such a confusing time. There's so much that goes into it. There's so many things that you're having to let go of, you know? You have to kind of, in a sense, let go of your innocence, let go of your childhood. Your body is changing in so many ways, especially like, I don't know what it's like to be a teenage boy for sure, but I know what it's like to be a teenage girl, and let me tell you, like, the amount of hormones that are changing in your body, and like your body changes, and the way that people see you changes, the way that people treat you changes. The things that you learn about your family, the things that you learn about the world, the things that you learn about the past. You know, this is really the prime time where you're learning about world history, about American history, and you're learning not only all these like good things, but all the bad things, right? So it's just kind of a lot of information that you're having to ingest and memorize and be able to give back, and these tests that are so important to your future, like pretty much make or break your entire life, you know, to you. And the way that, you know, adults make it seem too is as if like this is like do or die, like you're either gonna get good grades in school at this time and have a future, or you're not going to. Like, that's how they make it seem. It is so much pressure on you, and yet at the same time your body's going through these changes, and literally all this stuff is happening, and yet at the same time literally the only thing that you care about is whether or not somebody likes you. Your stupid brain makes you think like that your life is over because someone breaks up with you, because someone doesn't like you back, because someone doesn't want to be with you anymore and they would rather be with someone else. Like, emotions are high. And on top of that, there are a million other things that could be going on in your life based off of the family that you live with, based off of the friends that you have, based off of the influences that you're under. Like, I mean like the adults that are in your life, or the people that you admire that are in your life, but also like the pressure of other people, like wanting to be cool, wanting to seem like everybody else, because to be different is scary. All of these things. And writers like Ellen Hopkins and writers like Laurie Halse Anderson, who is the author of my favorite book, which I've briefly talked about before, Speak. These writers, these authors, are able to encapsulate these feelings, these emotions, and the traumas that are so, this sounds silly, but so easy to grab hold of you and affect you for years to come. I have, for a long time, like I can't remember when it started, right? But for a very long time have had an issue with guns. I don't like to be near them. I don't like to see them. I don't like seeing people that I love, that I care for, holding them in their hands, which is a very tough place to find myself, living in a house with a family who is very, very familiar with guns, and going camping with Mallory's brothers, specifically Kyle, who is got his own gun and brings his own gun when we go camping, right? Well, I just have this uncomfortable feeling being around them. And recently I've decided, I live with guns in the house. I should know how they work. I should know more information about them. And so I've asked to learn some stuff about them, learn how to shoot one, right? And this plays into the idea of I don't want to be ignorant. I don't want to close my eyes. But it truly concerns me. It gives me pause. It gives me anxiety to think about it, right? To think about a gun in my hands, freaks me out. But I wonder where it came from, because I don't remember being a younger kid and having these issues with guns. I don't remember thinking about it, which is a pretty lucky place to be in as a kid, especially considering how everything is now. But I don't remember where it started, which begs the question of, did it start because of the movie theater shooting? Because all of the times I can think of where the issue comes up is after that, which could be coincidence. It could be, just that I was a teenager. I learned history. I learned more about, guns and things like that, living in Colorado, where they weren't a big part, at least in a city life, they weren't a big part of my life to any real sense. And the number of things that have come up since that time, where people that I love and care about have hurt themselves using a gun on purpose. But I wonder if that's where it comes from. Because by the time I met Mallory, and we were friends, I had that fear. I do know that. But that was after the shooting. That was after 2012. Me and Mallory have been friends for 10 years. 11 years this October. And we just had the 11th year anniversary of this issue. So that right there tells me that this fear came sometime in that time frame, because I'm fairly certain I didn't have it beforehand, which says a lot, that I wasn't even involved in any real sense to this shooting, besides living in the same state and knowing a couple of people that were injured. But it was crazy. My cousin, one of my cousins, she made posts about it. I am fairly certain she knew somebody who had died in the shooting. I know that when I started at Red Robin in Aurora, that one of the people that died in the shooting, was killed in the shooting, had been a worker there or a regular there or something. I never asked because it just seemed too sensitive of a topic. I know that one of the people that I worked with was in the shooting as well. She's passed since then, not from the shooting, but for other reasons. So I knew her after the fact, right? But it was big. It was intense. It was, it had a wide area of effect, for sure. But what I was saying earlier, this book, People Kill People, by Ellen Hopkins, I read that book, and the book makes it very clear that the gun isn't the problem. It's the people behind it, right? Which is pretty clear from the title before you even read the book, because it goes by the phrase of like, guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? And I believe that too, right? I feel like guns are just the tool used to make things happen faster, as they always have been. But it's difficult. It's a difficult issue, and there's a reason why there's so much back and forth about it, and why it hasn't been solved to this day, is because guns are such a symbol for Americans, in that it's a way for us everyday people to have a way to protect ourselves from one another, as well as the government, in case of crap that they decide to put on us, which is happening either way, no matter what you say. But anyway, it's such a big representation of our individual freedom for a lot of people. And yet it is a weapon that has been used time and time again, in a way that people don't like to acknowledge as being the gun's fault. And it's not the gun's fault. But how much damage could somebody do with a knife versus a gun, right? Especially considering like the different kinds of guns that people can get, the different kinds of guns that have been used in these mass shootings. I think that for me, somebody who doesn't have a lot of information, and I should have researched this, but this is kind of an impromptu recording for me to do. It's just kind of, I was thinking all day long that, I needed to record, or I needed to edit the video that I was going to put out for you guys on Friday. And yeah, all day long I had this nagging feeling that I needed to talk about this. And if I was gonna talk about it, I needed to put it out this week, right? For it to be of relevance. So this is a pretty raw cut because obviously I'm not going to be doing a lot of editing since I'm recording this super late at night. But I don't have a lot of facts and figures in front of me. There's some things that I just know from when I've looked it up before, when it was tugging on me, because that's really when I research things, is when it tugs at me, when it pulls at me, when somebody says something that forces me to recognize my own ignorance about a subject and that I don't know enough to even be able to have a conversation with someone about it. So I know a lot of like stats and figures about things that I specifically look up, and there's some things I know about like gun violence that were relevant to me at one point or another. Like I know that like something like 325 people are shot in the United States like every single day, based off of the statistics or whatever. I know that a good portion of those, I think it's like a third or something like that, were shot and killed. And most of that 1/3 were intentionally shot by someone else, which is a staggering amount for every single day. It's a lot. It's dramatic. It's overwhelming to think about. But like I said, I don't have all of this information to be able to really talk in any sort of real way about what needs to happen, what changes need to go down for the better of us all. But that's something that I need to research for myself. That's something that I need to figure out for myself. And over time, I will add more to the show notes page about, what I learn, what I figure out, where I stand, I guess I should say. And that in no way means that everybody should have the same thoughts and opinions that I do. You should research it yourself. You should figure out where you stand, what you believe in yourself, right? But I will say that as uncomfortable as guns make me, for whatever reason, I've seen a family of people. I've seen people who know how to use these weapons for protection, strictly for what their purpose is, and not for murder. I've seen what that looks like, and so that tells me at least in the life that I live, that these guns can be handled with care, and that the issue lies in where we're letting the guns, I should say, who we're letting the guns be given to. Because one of the biggest issues that we have in America, in the world, I should say, is mental health. And I truly believe with my entire heart that anyone has the chance, has the opportunity, has the place within them to do good in life, to be kind in life. I talk about compassion on this podcast all the time, and in my life all the time. And I think that people who have done truly horrible things have it within them to make amends, to be better. But that doesn't mean that they're going to choose that. That doesn't mean that they have it within them to change something that they have grown up feeling their entire lives. It's very hard to change, which is not an excuse for those people. I'm not trying to say that it is, but I know the real issue is in mental health. And people deserve the chance to get better, to get help. And the problem is there's not a lot of really accessible ways to get help long term. So that's kind of what I walk away with it, without knowing stats and figures and all of that. So, if you do know those things, please let me know. Please tell me. I'm going to do my own research. But for me, the issue remains with mental health issues and how to fix learned behavior, and how to give people compassion and love and care that they otherwise haven't been given. I talked about, Steven Universe being a show that's all about kindness and love and care. And in that show, which is a children's show, I recognize, but in that show, Steven has people who intentionally want to do him harm, who put the lives of his loved ones at risk time and time again, and yet he holds out his hand of I want to know you, I want to help you. And that's something that I want to be able to do. I want to be able to try and help. And if I'm turned away, so be it. If they don't want to change, so be it. But I really genuinely want to try and help those people before it gets to the point of killing 12 people and injuring 90 plus people and giving PTSD to an entire city and causing people to fear going to the movies, and parents terrified to send their kids to school. When I lived in California, my cousin, my little cousin, Jason, not the one who does the podcast with me. He was 5 years old when I moved to California and was in kindergarten. And I played a huge role in taking him to school, bringing him home, helping him with his homework, teaching him, like reiterating the things he learned in class. Played a huge role in his education. And I wasn't working at the time, so he was kind of my job, you know. And I remember one day when I just had this weird feeling in my stomach, this horrible, horrible feeling. And he did not like school very much, especially the school he went to at that time. And I would get to his school and wait for him in front of the school for him to get out of class. And he'd be like one of the first people out of the door, right? Because he was so ready to go home. And this day, I had this weird feeling in my stomach. And so I'm standing there, the bell rings or whatever, and the door opens, and kid after kid after kid after kid come out of the door. And he's nowhere to be found. Like, nowhere to be seen, right? By me. And I panicked. I was terrified. I started going through worst case scenarios. I started thinking he was kidnapped at recess and nobody said anything. Somebody came to pick him up early who pretended to be a family member and he's gone. We haven't talked about kidnapping scenarios with him. We haven't come up with a passcode or password or anything like that. I don't know if he knows not to go with somebody. We haven't had that conversation. I wonder if Angie's had that conversation with him. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And I had those thoughts, but then I also had the thought of, like, if there was like a shooting or something, then they would have called us. Angie would have called me to let me know if something happened and Jason ended up going to the hospital if something was wrong, right? So if he isn't here, where is he? What's going on? You know, like these crazy thoughts, right? That shouldn't have to be on my mind. I shouldn't have had to jump to those conclusions, which, yes, those are huge jumps to make because he didn't walk out of the classroom within the first 15 kids, right? But, like, I was panicking. And then, like, all the kids came out and the teacher was there by the door and saying goodbye to everybody, and still no Jason. Like, it was clear all the kids had walked out of the room, still no Jason. So I walk up and I'm gonna start crying, right? And the teacher said, "Oh, Jason, he's just in the bathroom. He just had to go to the bathroom before, you know, right before the bell rang, he went into the bathroom." And I, like, sighed and I went, "Oh, okay." And didn't say anything to the teacher. I definitely didn't say anything to Jason. But we got into the car and went home, and we got out of the car when we got home, and I just, like, came around the car and I gave him, like, this huge hug. And he was a, 5-year-old boy, so he was like, what's going on? But I gave him this huge hug and I just held on to him because I had this, like, moment where I just was like, I'm sending him to school every day and I could not see him come home. Like, that's a real possibility. And so it was a lot for me, being his, like, part-time parent, in a way. It was scary. And I just know that, like, when I have kids of my own, that's going to be constantly on my mind. It is. I'm the type of person that has had worst case scenario be the scenario a lot of the time for most of my life. And so the idea of that happening just would sit with me all the time in the way that the world is now. And if anything, it's only gotten worse since 2012, you know? It's only gotten worse. So, where does that leave me at the end of this episode, right? What do I have to say to those people listening? I think the best thing that I could say is that I am still hopeful for a better tomorrow. I still want there to be purposeful change, important change, change that affects change in our world. And I need to research what that should be, at least in my mind, right? I need to look into that myself. But I guess what I have to say to you is this thing that I say always, which is that compassion is one of our best tools that we have in our arsenal. Compassion and kindness. And I try to use them every day. I try to use them for myself. I try to use them for people who don't know what it feels like to receive that from someone. And I really encourage you to do the same. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.